Hello, everybody, and welcome to A Real Point of View. My name is Greg Morgan. I'm your host for this evening, and joining me is one of our critics, the movie maven herself, Miss Karen D. Tonight, we're going to talk about what we never really talk about is the directors of the films. We always talk about the actors. We always talk about the essence of the film, the cinematography, the music, but we never really talk about the people who basically are the visionaries, the ones who actually give us the expression that we like and the things that we like about the movies, and that's the directors. So we're going to try to give you an idea of some of the directors that we ourselves like, and just mention some of the movies. What we'd like to do is continue to have a conversation, an ongoing conversation over the different episodes that we have in the near future, and talk more directly about specific directors and just concentrating on that director and their films. But tonight we want to just kind of have an overview, talking about different directors that we found have a lot of films or a few films that we really hold close to our chest, to our vest, that we really like. And we want to mention some of those movies so that we hope that you'll take the opportunity to investigate these films and watch these films and enjoy the films just like we've enjoyed them in the past. So Karen, I've got a few directors out there that I'm going to just throw out there initially, and then we'll talk about some of the different movies that they've been responsible for and that have entertained me over time. So I've got basically four directors that I kind of want to mention tonight. The first is the youngest of the four, and that's Ava DuVernay, who is retrospectively newer on the scene as a director. And then I've got Oliver Stone, another director, Alfred Hitchcock, and John Ford. Why don't you just give us an idea of the directors that you're thinking about discussing a little bit, and then we'll get into some of the films that have impressed us.
Okay. Well, one of the directors I would like to talk about very much is William Wyler. And I'd also like to look at the body of work of Mike Leigh. He's a British director. John Sayles, and also Kenneth Branagh.
Well, it's ironic that both of us have a British director, because actually a lot of people probably don't know this about Alfred Hitchcock, but he's actually British.
Right.
So I don't know. One of us can take the lead, I guess. Why don't I just go ahead and do that?
Why don't you go ahead?
I'm going to save the most recent director for last. Her body of work is not as large as the other three directors. However, that doesn't mean it's any less poignant. So the first one I want to talk about is John Ford. Now, John Ford basically, he basically was directing films from the early 30s, well into the mid 70s. So we're talking about 40 years of work, and he has 145 credits to his directorial abilities. One of the reasons why I picked John Ford is, growing up, I've always loved westerns, and at a very young age, got involved in watching some westerns that included John Wayne. Many of the films that John Ford has done have included John Wayne over time, but not just because of John Wayne. Some of these movies that director John Ford has produced, I did just outstanding. Since I spoke about John Wayne, first I'm going to just mention a few John Wayne movies. This, to me, by far is one of John Ford's best movies, and this does have John Wayne in it. The name of the movie is The Searchers. This movie has some wonderful actors in it. John Wayne, Jeffrey Hunter, For those of you not familiar with Jeffrey Hunter, he did King of Kings and played Jesus in King of Kings. You had Vera Miles, Ward Bond. Ward Bond was in a lot of John Ford movies and accompanied John Wayne in many of his films. Um, Ken Curtis, wonderful actor, great singer. But the list goes on and on. It's a myriad of wonderful actors in this film. And this film basically is a film pretty much about um, a young woman who is taken by a Native American tribe, and the family members and friends and who are just hell bent to try to find her and bring her back home. And you find yourself in many, many different conflicts in this film. Um, and John Ford found a way to merge all these different conflicts into one story. And it's a wonderful, wonderful portrayal of desperate people trying to do desperate things to try to find someone that they love. So this is one of the best movies John Ford has ever made, in my opinion. Now,
It's a story that it has a very grand scope too.
it does. It does. Yeah, it's so many different things that are happening within the realms of the film. It touches on so many different avenues, and you're thinking that you get pulled one way, pulled another way, and John Ford found a way to pull us all together and pull it all together. And I just think it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. Now, a few more films just want to mention that John Ford has graced us with are Sergeant Rutledge. This is a trial of an African American sergeant during the post Civil War era, and Jeffrey Hunter is also in that film. Wagon Train, which is a great film starring John Wayne. I was thinking, now here's a film, and again, John Ford again known very much for westerns, but here's a film that has biopic essence to it, and it was a very hard film to watch, but a very good film. I would think on a scale from 1 to 10, this is about an 8, 7 or 8 for me. But again, I said it's a hard film to watch. This is Cheyenne Autumn.
Mm-hmm.
This is with Richard Whitmark and Carol Baker. This is a film talking about Wounded Bow, I believe, this particular film incident, and his John Ford just had a way with westerns, getting you to understand what's going on, presenting the conflict, whether it be brutal, whether it be romantic. He just had a way to with film, and these are some of the films that I think you really would be interested in watching, ladies and gentlemen. So,
Well, let's talk about Cheyenne Autumn for a second, because
sure.
this film was done in 1964.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, during 1964, the typical movie that involved Native Americans generally painted them as the bad guys, as the criminals, as the savages, as the primitives, and the people who had no morals, or
Very negative connotation, right?
Extremely negative, stereotypical connotations. This movie departed from that in very significant ways, and I think it's significant that John Ford took on this project. I mean, there were so many instances in history where treaties were broken,
Mm-hmm.
and the deals that the white military made with Native Americans were just completely dishonored. And there aren't that many movies that really talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And especially not in 1964. So it's very interesting. You have a cavalry captain who is supposed to round up the Native Americans and get them back to probably what would be a reservation. It's a
Right.
reserve, so it's a reservation. He's supposed to round them up and get them back there. And instead, he finds himself won over by their courage in the face of a completely horrible situation that was brought on by the military. That's a very poignant story. And in 1964, I mean, I think this movie's well regarded now. I have no idea how well regarded it was in 1964, because this is not the typical box office story that gets told, especially involving Native Americans.
Yeah, I think a lot of the different issues, and not just this film, but a lot of the films that John Ford took on, brings out a lot of different issues, whether the particular film was a biopic or not.
Right.
And I I applaud him for being brave enough to not just direct these films, but bring out those parts of the film that, sometimes in the '60s, films weren't as relevant in bringing out, like you said, even in this situation, certain issues. So I kudos to him for really good films. And another one of my favorite films of his is a John Wayne film, which is a film that's actually set into a trio of different films. But this one was one of the better ones. This is during, again, post-Civil War. This is Rio Grande with John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. It shows
Made 1950.
Yeah, it shows the love of a woman for an estranged relationship, a love of a son by the woman and her estranged husband, who's a cavalry leader, and the son himself, who bonds the two of them together because of a decision that's made. So it's a really good story. He finds a way to tell these stories, and they're really good. So if you get an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, look up John Ford. A good place to look is IMDb, which is the Internet Movie Database, to find different titles. You'll find that you'll be enriched by the different films that he's made. So why don't you go ahead, Karen, and give us a director that you like?
Okay, well, before we do that, I kind of hate to leave John Ford quite so quickly, because, I mean, his body of work was really amazing.
Yeah, it's huge.
And I mean, I'd like to just mention one of my favorite movies that he did. I mean, I can't say I'm a John Ford fan necessarily, but it's impossible to look over the body of work and not respect what he's done. And even if you don't know his work, if you watch movies, especially if you watch old movies, it's probably going to be pretty hard to, at one point or another, not come across a movie that he's directed that you like. A movie like that for me was How Green Was My Valley, made in 1941.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was a stunning movie about just life in Wales and the coal miners, and it's sort of told from the point of view of this young boy who is part of this coal mining family, and just beautiful portraits of these people, and lovely cinematography, and a really nice melding of song and pastoral themes and honor and things like that. I mean, it was just a really well done movie. And that's just one of so many movies he's done. He's directed over 80 movies.
Yeah, and Maureen O'Hara is actually in this film as well. A
Yes.
wonderful actress who, obviously, he was very loyal to these actors and actresses. Walter Pidgeon does a great job in this film.
He really does. He really does.
The sad thing about it is the body of work for John Ford is humongous. And I wish we could touch on each of the individual films. Another good film that I I apologize for not mentioning before, is Henry Fonda, The Grapes of Wrath.
Oh my
It is
goodness.
a iconic classic film
That was
of
fabulous.
struggle, uh, of struggle during the Depression. I mean, this is a great film. Even Stagecoach, which is probably one of the best westerns of its time back in the late 30s. So, again, a wonderful director who knows a lot about the West, knows a lot about relationships, and he puts all that into his films. He's
Right.
very, very, very good director. So let's talk about a director that you've brought out for our show today, Karen.
Well, let me talk about somebody who is, I would say, like a cohort or a contemporary of John Ford, and that would be William Wyler. They were around the same age. I think William Wyler's maybe a little bit younger than John Ford. But in terms of Hollywood history, both of these men are probably the most honored directors in the history of cinema.
Mhm.
I think William Wyler is second only to John Ford in the number of Academy Awards that have been won for directing, for his directing body of work. William Wyler had a 45-year directing career. And let me just give you an idea of some of the films that he's done. The first one that comes to mind is Ben-Hur,
Mm-hmm.
which was 19,
1959.
1959. Sorry, I lost my place here.
Oh, you're fine.
1959 film starring Charlton Heston and oh God, well, Charlton Heston was just amazing in this film, and so many other good people whose names I can't recall off the top of my head, um, but
One of the
that's probably one of the
magistrates.
best. What?
He was
I'm
one of the
sorry.
magistrates, Jack Hawkins. But the person who really made me want to watch this, I loved Charlton Heston, but it was Stephen Boyd,
That's what I was
who
trying to think of, Stephen
I
Boyd.
thought was great in this film.
Right, because what I always thought about Ben-Hur was that Stephen Boyd was really in love with Charlton Heston, and this was a desperate bid for attention when he put his mother and his sister, like, sent them off to be slaves because Charlton Heston wouldn't pay enough attention to him.
Yeah,
But
this is a perfect film to say frenemies.
right,
These guys were
right,
true frenemies.
right. But William Wyler did all kinds of movies. He did musicals, he did comedies, he did movies that dealt with really interesting social themes, like The Children's Hour in 1961 with Audrey Hepburn. And I think Deborah Kerr, I want to say, is in this movie. About women whose teachers whose reputations are tarnished because a child thinks that they're having an affair, that there's something wrong
Mm-hmm.
with their friendship, there's something odd about their friendship that's too intimate, and how they deal with that. Very interesting movie. And by 2010 standards, the 2010s, it might be regarded as tame, but in 1961, this was groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Based on Lillian Hellman's book. Another movie that he did was The Big Country, and I know, Gregory, that's one of your favorite films.
Gregory Peck, of course.
Yes, Gregory Peck. Burl Ives won an Academy Award as Best Supporting Actor in this movie, and Gene Simmons was also in this movie.
Love Gene Simmons. She is a wonderful actress.
Yes. So that was one, but he also directed Funny Girl with Barbara
Barbara
Streisand.
Streisand, yeah.
And Omar Sharif. And this was a very controversial movie at the time that it came out because Omar Sharif was Arabian, Barbara Streisand was Jewish, and they were cast as love interest, and that just rocked the world in 1968. Seems strange now, but it really did.
Yeah.
He did The Desperate Hours. which is, you know, a war movie. Very, again, very well done. And Roman Holiday, not one of my favorite movies, but it's a well done movie. But let me tell you a movie that I love that he directed. It's The Heiress from 1949 with Montgomery Clift and Olivia de Havilland. One of my all-time favorite movies. Olivia de Havilland was brilliant in this movie. And Montgomery Clift was like the perfect foil, the perfect cad to her love story. The Little Foxes.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't forget Betty Davis, because
oh my goodness,
trying to direct Betty Davis in itself had to be an interesting endeavor.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because from the reading that I've been able to do, as it turns out, I mean, from what I'm reading, William Wyler was not, you would not call William Wyler an actor's director, not by any stretch of the imagination. He was a director's director. And he actually was famous for his inability to articulate anything to the actors that he worked with. And it was a source of continuing frustration for the act. I mean, it's like if you were an actor, if William Wyler called, of course you would sell, you know, several family members to work with him.
Right.
But you also approach this with some trepidation, because Henry Ford, and I think this was in the movie Jezebel, he had to do a scene 40 times, had to do the scene 40 takes with the scene. And Henry Ford said to William Wyler reportedly, well, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to change? He's like, just do it better.
Right.
That was it. That was the only direction he got. Charlton Heston, William Wyler was not happy with one of the scenes that Charlton Heston had filmed in Ben-Hur. And Ben-Hur was like, well, okay, what do you need me to do? He's like, it just stinks. So you just need to keep doing it till you get it right. Okay, what do I do with that information? Can you help me out here? And as it turns out, there was a method to his madness, because he would purposefully push the buttons of his actors, just make them mad, because he felt like if they got mad, then they would drop pretense and drop their acting.
Right, no longer acting.
Right. And they would just get so mad. They would just, you know, they would throw lines away, or, you know, or do things that might be somewhat unexpected or edgy or far more interesting than just acting. And so he would do that. And not a lot of actors did not work with him. There's some actors, or there's some directors you can say, oh my goodness, if you see this director, then you know these actors will follow, that this director always works with this sort of core group of actors.
Yeah, like John Ford.
Like John Ford. William Wyler was not like that at all. You might work with him once and that might be it. Betty Davis is probably one of the few actors who worked with him multiple times. She did 3 films with him. But not a lot of other people can say that.
But his body of work, you must admit, it is phenomenal. He did not just great films, but he did epics.
He really did. He really did.
And you're looking at these films, not just the cinematography was wonderful, especially in Ben-Hur and in Big Country.
Oh my goodness!
It's just a wonderful body of work. It just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just good stuff.
He did another movie, one of my favorite movies, called Detective Story, with Kirk Douglas and Eleanor Parker. And it's a very claustrophobic, and I mean that in the best sense, sort of film, because it takes place in this police station in New York. And it's just basically kind of like a day in the life story. But during that day, you see all of this drama and this marriage between this detective and his wife, who is very well played by Eleanor Parker, and they're trying to deal with the assortment of criminals who come in and out, and and Kirk Douglas is trying to be a good husband, but he's also trying to be a good cop. And it almost sounds like, well, there's not that much there for a movie, but it was riveting. Oh my goodness. And so well acted. So well acted. It was just really wonderful story.
I remember I was trying to watch that film, and early on I was thinking, because I wasn't aware about the just being in the technically one part of the building. When I first started watching it, I just was a Kirk Douglas fan, so I just thought I'd look at it. But it's funny because you don't pay attention to the surroundings as much as you do the story that's going on in front of you. And so
Right.
you're not even aware, not totally aware, and of the fact that you really haven't left this building. You know?
Right.
And so as claustrophobic as it sounds, as you alluded to, as it sounds, it really wasn't. You were in the big scope of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And again, really well done. And I'd love to tell you more about what happened in this movie, but it would totally be spoilers. I mean, that would be the only way to talk about it. So I would just say, if you get a chance to see this movie, especially on Turner Classic Movies, watch the movie. It's so well done. Another movie that I loved for years, it was like one of my all-time favorites, was Wuthering Heights. He
Oh,
directed that with Laurence
Laurence
Olivier and
Olivier.
Roland Oberon. Oh my goodness. I had such a crush on Laurence Olivier after watching this movie for years.
He made Heathcliff what it is today in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I read Wuthering Heights for school, and he was Heathcliff through and through.
Yes. 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 Tortured, mean, so in love. And here's an interesting story. William Wyler worked with Samuel Goldwyn, and I mean, he was under contract to MGM, so did a lot of movies for them. But Samuel Goldwyn was also just as much of a control freak when it came to movies that he was responsible for producing as William Wyler was when it came to movies he was directing.
Mm-hmm.
So Samuel Goldwyn would just sort of interfere if he didn't like something. And when it came to Wuthering Heights, he didn't like William Wyler's vision for the ending of that movie. And William Wyler's like, I'm not changing it. And Samuel Goldwyn's like, oh, yes, you are. So he filmed, I mean, and I guess Wuthering Heights is out there enough. I mean, you know, Kathy dies and Heathcliff is mortified. And in the end, you know, Heathcliff just sort of dies of a broken heart. And then in the end, there are these two ghostly figures that are walking amongst the moors. That was not William Wyler's vision for the movie. That was Samuel Goldwyn's vision for the movie, because he wanted a happy ending. He wanted some sort of idyllic, you know, ending. And William Wyler had none of it. So Samuel Goldwyn filmed that ending and stuck it at the end of the movie.
Yeah, not perfect people we are as humans, and especially human directors in films. You want to be able to express yourself as much as possible within the realms of the film itself, but it doesn't mean you don't have obstacles.
Oh, of course. A lot of the obstacles are called producers.
Yes,
Um,
indeed.
but some other movies, just before we leave William Wyler, Dotsworth is a fabulous film that he did. He directed Barbary Coast. He directed. I mentioned Jezebel, The Westerner, The Letter with Bette Davis. Mrs. Miniver is a fabulous movie about World War II told from the point of view of what happened in Britain, because so much of the theater of the war took place in Britain. Walter Pidgeon was also in that movie, and Friendly Persuasion, another really extremely well done movie. The Liberation of L.B. Jones was the last film that he did before he passed away.
Very good. Well, why don't we get to another one of your favorites, and then I'm going to go to one of mine, Karen. So who else do you have out there for us?
Well, I'd like to mention a Brit,
Okay.
Mike Leigh. And as I guess as William Wyler will never be known as an actor's director, I think Mike Leigh would be known as an actor's director. Somebody who's very much in tune with what actors need, and he's really good at motivating them to get the best performances out of them. Mike Leigh is best known for the movie called Secrets and Lies. And this movie was done in, I want to say 1996 is when it was done. And I remember going to the movies to see this. And I mean, it moved me to tears. I thought it was just so well done. And it's basically it's kind of a coming of age story, except it's a coming of age story that involves an adult, about this young woman who's of African heritage, but she's been adopted. Not just African heritage. I mean, she grew up in Britain. She was very much a British person, but she was adopted, and she wanted to find out more about her birth mother. And she finds out that her birth mother is white, and that's where the story sort of takes off from there. Brenda Blethyn played her birth mother, and Marianne Jean-Baptiste played the woman who was searching for her family. And she just runs across this assortment of people who make up this birth family, and they have all kinds of issues and problems and weird things, and she's trying to fit in with them, and she doesn't know whether she ever will. And it's just beautifully done. It's so poignant. It's such a sensitively created story. And I don't know how he got the performances out of these people. I don't think he did it in William Wyler's way by making them angry all the time. I think he might have actually had discussions where, he sort of gave a hint as to maybe he articulated what he wanted in terms of a performance. Whatever he did, it worked. It was just a gorgeous film. Mike Leigh is somebody who likes to write the material that he directs generally, and he does not have a huge body of work. I mean, in terms of what's in IMDb, there are like 23 projects that he's directed. He's very well known for Career Girls. And
Vera Drake too.
And Vera Drake. I was getting ready to mention Vera Drake. And of more recent vintage, he did Mr. Turner, which is a movie that's only 2 years old. And he's the type of person who will work. You'll see the same people show up in his movies very often. So you'll see Brenda Blethyn. You will see Timothy Spall. He was in Secrets and Lies. He also starred in Mr. Turner. So he's the kind of person who, it's like he wants to feel comfortable with the actors that he wants to trust the actors that he has around him. And generally that happens when he knows who he's dealing with. So, he's an excellent director, and he might do a project every 3 or 4 years. He's not prolific. He's not a Frank Capra or William Wyler or John Ford from that standpoint. But each project is lovingly, crafted and lovingly, put together and well thought out.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Well, why don't we keep going on the British tip here? And a director who's probably my most favorite director. This is the director whose films I would sit with my mother on weekends and watch the early matinee theater on television, and was able to catch many a film by this particular director. And again, this is a British-born director, but we in the United States have adopted him and taken him in as one of our own, and that's Alfred Hitchcock. Alfred Hitchcock probably was he had to be the predecessor to uh, Spike Lee and um, oh, what's the director's name? Who's always in his films? Woody Allen. Um, Early in, uh, long before Woody Allen and Spike Lee, Alfred Hitchcock always made cameo appearances in many of his films. And
Mm-hmm.
if you go back, you'll see him either walking by, standing in the if there's a hotel like in Spellbound, he's actually bumps into the people and asks them to take a picture. And there's just so many different ways that Alfred Hitchcock finds a way to get into many different films that he's produced and directed. One of those films was The Wrong Man. Um, Henry Fonda is in this film, and he's in a diner, and you see across the way Alfred Hitchcock is reading a newspaper. So he was very much a man who put himself into a lot of his films. Now, some of the most iconic films that have ever been made, films that I think all of us have heard or know the names of, like Jimmy Stewart in Rear Window, um, uh, Anthony Perkins in Psycho, Vertigo, North by Northwest with Cary Grant. I mean, this is one of those directors who is also a film writer, but um, his direction of all these wonderful movies that over time have stood the test of time. His ability to utilize shading properly in a lot of these films, adding more suspense and drama to an already dramatic film. Um, Probably one of my favorite films, which is also a film that used to scare me quite a bit as a young child, is The Birds.
Oh, it still scares me. I refuse to watch that movie.
Yeah, this is back in 1963. Now, a lot of the films that Alfred Hitchcock made were in black and white. And there's a reason for that. It adds to the dramatic essence of the film. And again, as I alluded to before, proper shadings to help set the mood, set the tone. But this is one of those rare Alfred Hitchcock films that was actually done in color. Not like they didn't have color back then, but a lot of people were using the darkness and the shading to help facilitate a point or get a certain essence of a film across. Well, he didn't do that with The Birds. He didn't have to. This is a scary, scary movie. And you wouldn't think it would be. So if you're afraid of birds already, this is not the movie for you.
No, it's not.
If you're not afraid of birds, you might become afraid of birds in watching The Birds, which stars Tippi Hedren and Rod Taylor. This is a wonderful film. Now, another film that is an iconic movie, that's an Alfred Hitchcock, one of his best films, is Psycho. We have more recent, there's a TV show which is based off of this film that's very popular nowadays. But Alfred Hitchcock found a way to get Anthony Hopkins to be the nicest, most wonderful serial killer you've ever seen. This is that movie. And poor Janet Leigh actually sadly succumbed to this madman's essence. There's a myriad of films, 69 in all, that were directed by Alfred Hitchcock.
My favorite of his is Suspicion.
I was going to say that. Suspicion with
Cary Grant and Joan Fontaine.
Joan Fontaine.
Oh, my
Joan
goodness.
Fontaine Joan Fontaine is Olivia de Havilland's sister. So you're
Yes.
talking about coming from a wonderful family of actresses. And Suspicion is one of the. There's a scene in Suspicion. Now, I'm sorry, I've got to go there. There's a scene in Suspicion where Joan Fontaine's husband is Cary Grant,
Hmm.
and there's a feeling, a sense that she has, and she's ill, and she's in one of her most fragile states. And this is where lighting in the black and white film really comes to play. It,
Hmm.
it shows Cary Grant walking up a spiral staircase
Oh, I love that
with
scene.
with, with a saucer with a glass of milk. And so everybody watching this film is trying to think: is he coming to poison her? Is there poison in the milk?
Yep.
Because the look on his face is so stoic and
Yes.
so
Almost
blank.
grim.
Is and that's just it. And the lighting on the staircase and the shadowing. It's like he comes from the dark into the light momentarily for you to see him and think to yourself, oh my God, what's he gonna do? Back into the dark.
Yes. And here's the other thing that I just love about that one little scene. And this is something that had not been done before. Alfred Hitchcock wanted to highlight the milk.
The
And
milk.
so they came up with a way to suspend a light bulb into the glass from like a very long wire from a rafter. So as he walked, the milk takes on this really eerie glow in black and white. It's because there's a lit light bulb suspended in the milk to make it look so strange. And
And
I
and
mean,
you're
nobody had done that before he did that.
and you're looking at Cary Grant coming up those stairs creepingly. Now, obviously, because of what you just said, part of that had to do with him trying to be as steady as possible. But knowing that Cary Grant is such a good actor and such great direction from Alfred Hitchcock, he comes up that stairs almost like a specter,
Hmm.
and you're thinking she's done.
Yeah.
You're thinking this is it. She's over,
Yep.
and it's a very wonderful film. You see,
Nigel Bruce was amazing, perfect foil as Binky to Cary Grant. Nigel Bruce played Cary Grant's best friend in Suspicion.
and most of you, if you're not familiar with Nigel Bruce, played Sherlock Holmes is Dr. Watson.
Yes,
So in many of the Basil Rathbone feature films about Sherlock Holmes.
he's an
So
amazing actor.
oh, he's a great actor. But Alfred Hitchcock knew what to do and what to get out of the actors. He was another man who knew what to get out of the actors, knew what to get out of the scenes and the circumstances that these characters found themselves in. Another great film is Vertigo with uh, Jimmy Stewart.
You know,
Uh,
don't mention the V word.
Vertigo?
Yeah,
Oh,
don't mention.
sorry about that. But let me go to another Jimmy Stewart movie. Now, I know you're not a humongous fan of Jimmy Stewart, Karen, but
No.
this is one of those movies ladies and gentlemen, you have got to see this film. This is one of Alfred Hitchcock's best. This is a film where you actually become a part, not just a part of the film, but an accessory to murder. This film is called The Rope.
Mm.
This is a great film. This is a film that's going to keep you on your toes. You jockey through this film on your toes, trying to figure out what's going on. And what's going on is that you're a active participant in the murder. You are an accessory to the murder. Another great film, and Karen, as you already told everybody today, I'm a big uh, Gregory Peck fan. And one of the craziest rides you'll ever have is Alfred Hitchcock's Spellbound
Oh, yes.
with Ingrid Bergman and Gregory Peck.
Hmm.
This is one crazy roller coaster ride of a film.
Hmm.
And again, the black and white essence, the shading, um, the this superb direction in this film. Um, Alfred Hitchcock at his best.
One of my other favorite movies by him is Strangers on a Train.
Right. Yeah,
Love
the same actor
that
that's in
movie.
Strangers on a Train is in The Rope. So yeah,
Right.
here he is,
Farley Granger,
Burley
Robert
Granger.
Walker. Um, Alfred Hitchcock's daughter was in that movie.
Oh, now that I didn't know.
Yep. And just, I mean, just so well done. I mean, that poor Farley Granger, who is like you know, this hapless pro tennis player, and he comes across Robert Walker, who is certifiable, and Robert Walker's like, you do my murder and I'll do yours. You do my, don't you want to get rid of your, of your wife, and I'll get rid of your wife and you get rid of my dad, and Farley Granger's like, yeah, whatever, okay, fine, yeah, sure, and thinking and it's like, no, he was serious, you need to do my murder. Like,
Yeah.
are you kidding me? These people have lost their minds.
Now, a more recent version of this, there's two guys in this film, and they made a remake and changed the title, where it's two women, and it's called Diabolique.
Yes,
And
but Strangers on a Train is far better than that movie.
Stranger on a Train is a better film, though. It is.
There's no contest.
I'm going to mention two other Hitchcock films because, again, there's just a myriad of wonderful work here. But a movie that really struck me, I know this is a film that my wife likes too. My wife's not humongous into the black and white films, but she, on occasion, will find a really good one, and they usually are the really good ones. So one of the films that she really likes is Shadow of a Doubt.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, well, this is with Joseph Cotton,
Teresa Wright.
Teresa Wright, right. And this is if you want to see evil, Joseph Cotton portrays evil in this film far better than a lot of people who you just knew were criminals. He finds a way to be very charming, very alluring, just like a spider wants a fly into its web. It's just a really good movie. And the last movie that I want to mention is a movie with a really good actor who typically played a lot of, in his later years, he was in a lot of situation comedies, but in his early years, he plays kind of in suspense roles. And that was Robert Cummings.
Oh, love Robert Cummings.
And Robert Cummings found himself in a film that, well, I Dial M for Murder is one, but the movie that I'm talking about is The Saboteur.
Oh.
Here's a guy, and he and his friends, work at this airplane plant during World War II, and they're trying to help, the war effort by being a part of this. And someone sabotages the plant that they work in, and people are killed. And they're trying to figure out who the saboteur is, and everything leads to him.
Wow.
And so he's got to find a way to get them to understand it wasn't him, because one of the last people they saw inside the building was him. So this is a great movie, a very suspenseful movie. Something about Alfred Hitchcock and suspense that go hand in hand. So definitely, if you haven't, you want to definitely see Shadow of a Doubt. You would definitely want to see Saboteur. Suspicion.
Strangers on a Train. Rope.
Rope. It's there's just so many for Hitchcock that you're not going to go wrong with any of them. Secret Agent.
Don't see the birds.
Yeah, try the birds too.
No, don't try the birds. Birds for the birds.
Robert Young in The Secret Agent. Another good one. And Rebecca. Oh, that's very good.
Rebecca's very, very good. Excellent movie.
So, yeah, Alfred Hitchcock is the man as far as I'm concerned. Rear Window, Jimmy Stewart, great movie. Just oh, I forgot. Last one, To Catch a Thief. Very
Ah,
good
with
film.
Grace Kelly.
Grace Kelly, yeah.
And he was somebody else who, you keep seeing the same people over and over again in his
Especially
films.
especially Cary Grant and Jimmy Stewart. They were like
Cary
mainstays.
Grant, Jimmy Stewart, Joseph Cotton, and Grace
And
Kelly,
Grace Kelly, yeah.
and Tippi Hedren.
Yeah.
He had a thing for blondes. He was well known for his, practically blonde fetish. So the tall, cool looking blonde, model types always caught his attention. And that was, and Tippi Hedren and Grace Kelly sort of personified that. So Grace Kelly showed up in a number of Hitchcock films, and so did Tippi Hedren.
Here we go. Grace Kelly, Robert Cummings in Dial In for Murder.
Yes, and that's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, with Ray Milland.
Alfred, I love Ray Milland in that movie. He's somebody else who can play, sort of the evil man. I mean, he comes across as very sinister because he doesn't look evil. He looks, he looks charming. He looks nice. He looks reasonable, and all the while he's, planning these dastardly things and roping people into doing different things and, these diabolical schemes. And it's like, really? Because you have so much going for you. Why are you wasting your time with that? You want to say to him. And, he sort of straddles that line, right, which the best villains do, where you see the good, so you're not sure if they're really that bad, or what's going on.
And that's the thing, you're convinced by what's going on that he's evil, but somehow the persona of the character makes you think, well, he must have had a reason,
right?
Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's not the one who's the villain. Maybe he's just misunderstood. Ray Milland was very good at persuading you without a lot of effort that he was just the good guy.
Right. And just misunderstood.
Like all psychotic what's the other one that starts with an N? Not neurotic. It's well, I can't think of the term. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but crazy. He was just crazy, right? And he led you to believe that he was sane.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, could have been Dracula.
Right.
Well, I'm gonna jump in my last person, and this young lady has a smaller body of work.
You don't want me to do my person?
You're gonna close this out.
Oh.
Because mine is going to be pretty quick.
Okay.
This person was involved in a lot of recent films. She had an involvement in Spider-Man 2, iRobot, Collateral, but those were more as a publicist and one of the co-producers. But a movie that she directed, which I found was a wonderful film, most recently, and it was up for an Academy Award, is Selma. And the director that I'm talking about is Ava DuVernay. She is a wonderful director. She puts a lot of passion into her films. That was one of her better films. One of her lesser films was I Will Follow You. She too is another one who uses many actors in her movies over and over again. One of them is Amari Hardwick, who is an up-and-coming actor. But in this particular film, I Will Follow, stars Sally Richardson and Amari Hardwick, and it is a wonderful love story. Another wonderful love story with Amari Hardwick in it is Middle of the Road.
Middle of Nowhere.
Middle of Nowhere. I'm sorry. Thank you. Middle of Nowhere. It also has a Brit, because we were talking about British actors a few episodes of our show ago, with
David
David
Oyelowo.
Oyelowo. Thank you. I was trying to get it out. David Oyelowo. David Oyelowo. Another up and coming wonderful actor. Ava DuVernay has found a way to bring out the best in the actors that she directs. And evidence of that, for even if you haven't seen any of her lesser films, her current film, which stands out and stands it on its own, is Selma. David Oyelowo is wonderful as Martin Luther King in this film, and all the different actors. Even Common, who is a rap artist, has found a way to this film as an actor, and is his role is not large, but is very poignant in the film. Um, and she just has a way of getting the most out of the actors and actresses that come across the come across in these films. Just wanted to throw that out there. I'm have become a fan of hers. I've seen some of her shorts also. Just a great hand at directing. So why don't you
Awesome.
close us out, Karen?
Well, I guess my last director will be John Sayles. And he's somebody else who is not an especially prolific director. As a director, he has 23 projects. He has more projects to his credit as a writer. He's also an actor. So he's somebody else who I would put in the category of an actor's director. And he's known for working with a lot of the same people. He practically put Chris Cooper on the map because of Chris Cooper's performance in this movie called Lone Star. And it's just, it still has long been one of my favorite movies. I went to the movies to see Lone Star. It was done in 1996, so it's 20 years old now. Still holds up after 20 years. And what I like about John Sayles, and you'll see this through the projects that he's directed, he does not shy away. In fact, he embraces the human conflict, especially when it comes to matters of race or matters or between or matters of gender or matters of class. These sort of artifices that we use to distinguish ourselves. He attacks those with vigor. Ethics. He directed 8 Men Out, which was the story of the Black Sox scandal in the early 20th century. And really well done in an ensemble cast. Bill Irwin, who was really a tap dancer, did a fabulous job as an actor.
Chicago actor John Cusack.
In this movie, John Cusack was in this movie. And it just showed, I mean, like you really to me, you really need to like baseball to sort of even take this on. And I really like the way he just showed like the life of these guys. I mean, they're literally living the American dream. And they have this dream that before their very eyes turns into a nightmare.
Right.
Because of Shoeless Joe Jackson and really, really well done. He also did Matawan, which is a movie that he's very famous for. The Brother from Another Planet. This movie put Joe Morton on the map as an actor.
Who is a great actor.
He was just amazing at the weirdest little movie. This movie just took the indie world by storm because there really wasn't that much of an indie world at the time. I mean, this movie came out in 1984, and just the strangest little movie. And Joe Morton was really weird in this movie, but so good, so good.
Not familiar, Joe Morton is on Scandal as the
Papa Pope.
Papa Pope. So
right, but he used to be the brother from another planet.
That's right. He kind of is on that show too.
Yeah. Passion Fish, Mary Steenburgen, Alfred Woodard. Really interesting story. about the woman, the nurse, would plays a nurse to Mary Steenburgen's sort of difficult woman who needs care. Sunshine State is another really interesting movie about sort of like big business and real estate, but then issues of race and class play in this movie just as poignantly. Honey Dripper is not very well known, but he directed that movie. And Charles Dutton was in this movie in Honey Dripper. Takes place in rural Alabama in 1950, and it's just basically about what happens with the man who owns this lounge and how he's trying to get out of debt, and the things that he does to get out of debt. Just really well done. But my Lone Star has been one of my favorite movies for the last 20 years. Always will be. LaTanya Richardson was in this movie. Joe Morton was in this movie, playing the father to I think he was the father to one of the characters, and he was just completely insensitive, didn't want to understand, had no interest in dealing with this child of his. I think it was his child. And Chris Christopherson plays this sheriff, and Matthew McConaughey also plays a sheriff in this movie. And again, it's ensemble work. The actors need to depend on each other, and they really need to be in simpatico, in a real symbiotic relationship with the director. They all have to work together. You don't get the performances and one hinges on the other. If one falls, they all fall. Right. And with Lone Star, you see that they all hold each other up, and they all help each other just achieve this really, telling of a really interesting story, mystery. Elizabeth Payne was brilliant in this movie. Loved her in this movie.
And for those of you who are not familiar, this is the movie that introduced me personally to not just Matthew McConaughey, but Chris Cooper.
Right. Yes, he put Chris Cooper on the map for not just for you, but for the world. Chris Cooper hasn't stopped working since.
Yeah, Chris Cooper is the man. He's in his role is not very big in this movie that I'm thinking about. We talked about this movie recently. Now he's in the Bourne movies with Matt Damon also, but what is it? Sandra Bullock, A Time to Kill. Sandra Bullock, Samuel L. Jackson, Matthew McConaughey, and Chris Cooper. His role in there is not large, but it's so poignant. Wonderful actor. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and I, like we said, John Sayles is another one of those directors. He works with people he trusts, but he's also really adept at bringing out amazing performances from the people that he chooses to work with. And if John Sayles calls, to me, it's like if you're an actor and John Sayles calls, it's not, it's when do you want me? Where do you want me? How soon can I get there? Because it's an honor to work with somebody like that.
Well, many of the directors that we've aforementioned have had a way with us as viewers, especially Karen and I. We wholeheartedly want you to investigate as much as you can into these directors and the films that they've made. And you'll see their expressions and their signatures, all of which are wonderful. And some of the movies that we've mentioned, you got to see them, ladies and gentlemen. They're just awesome. You get an opportunity to play this particular segment back to get some of the names that we've mentioned. Please do so, because you would be doing yourself a disservice not to see many of the films that we've mentioned today. Any last words before we get out of here, Karen?
No, except to say that it's kind of fun to focus on, the people who help make movies. It's not, I mean, the movies are really a director's medium, but people in the entertainment industry talk about how theaters and actors medium, directors don't really have that much control over what happens once the curtain goes up. But film is a whole different animal that is definitely a director's medium, and it's the actors who don't have much control, and the writers don't have much control. It's the director's vision that you end up seeing on the film, and they sort of, it's like they're the conductor of this huge orchestra, and between the cinematographer, the sound people, the lighting, the actors, the customers, it's their vision that gets put up on the screen. And there's some great directors out there that are just shown a real talent for that. And I think the directors that we mentioned today really exemplify that.
Kudos to these directors that help make our lives that much more fun and exciting, taking us down that adventurous road, and helping us see what's at the end of the tunnel. And a lot of times it's a wonderment at the end of the tunnel. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining Karen and I today here on A Real Point of View. We hope to see you again next week with another episode. And you never know, we might have something to surprise you. But again, make sure you get out to the movies. It's a wonderful thing, the things that you learn through film. Thanks again for joining us here at A Real Point of View. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.